Hey, everybody, we are locked and loaded for the latest edition of Gun on One. It is powered by the Inside the Birds Network. I'm Derrick Gunn, and my man right here, I worked with him for at least 15 years at NBC Sports Philadelphia. We did a show together on another network that we won't mention
No.
for a couple of years.
Mhm.
I know him. I love him like family. I worked with him, my goodness, from the inception of NBC Sports Philadelphia when it was Comcast Sportsnet. He is the host of the Eagles postgame show on WIP and also the fifth quarter on WIP as well.
Yeah.
The one and only Rob Ellis. Robbie E., it has been way overdue, my brother, to talk some football.
Too long, and we actually go back to 97.
Yes.
1997 is how far back we go. So, we've had a lot of fun together, man. So I miss you, and I'm happy to be with you, as always.
Likewise, my brother.
Yeah.
In the NFL, you always expect the unexpected. And what an unexpected game this turned out to be between Washington and the Eagles. Of course, Washington rallies to win a 36-33 thriller. And 11 plays into the game, the franchise quarterback, Jalen Hurts, goes down. Did you see the ISO shot when he got up of how glazed his eyes looked?
Yeah, Derek, I give the referee props. That ref was on it. Saw that he was a little wobbly, got him out of the game. And honestly, man, like I know we criticize the league a lot in Thursday night games and all that kind of stuff. But I thought this was an example today of everybody looking out for the best interest of the player. The refs, the independent neurologist on the Eagles sideline. Like I know, Jalen, what kind of competitor he is.
Oh my goodness.
He's telling, I'm fine, trying to get back in there. And those guys weren't going to let him back in. So I really give them all a lot of credit because look, we know what this is, man, with these guys and what happens later in life a lot of times. So I think they did the right thing. But yeah, it was nasty. It didn't look at first glance, it didn't look that bad, but you just never know.
And the thing is, Rob, he gets up, he walks off the field. Well, he tried to go back to the huddle.
Yeah.
Then he repped him, off the field.
Mm-hmm.
He goes into the blue tent. He comes out with his helmet on, and you're thinking, okay, he's cleared.
Yeah.
He's going back in the game, and then all of a sudden you get word he's heading to the locker room. And when they head to the locker room, Rob, you know what that usually means? You're done.
Yeah, it's done. There's two things you're right. When the helmet's on, you're thinking, all right, he is going to be back in. I thought Pickett would lead that series, which they scored on. And then it was going to be Jalen right after that. But yeah, I mean, this obviously was a little bit more in depth than what we had thought and what it looked like. And now the big question is what happens because they still haven't clinched even the division yet.
No.
With I think a kind of dangerous Dallas team, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But yeah, I agree. I mean, it was it flipped the game on its ear in a lot of ways because it was like a delayed effect because yes, they did score when Pickett hit AJ for the touchdown, but then we saw bad Pickett. That interception, Derek, I think, and again, I'm not laying the game on Pickett at all.
Right.
Because ultimately, if your big boys make plays, the game's over. But it gave Washington life. Like they were about to be run out of the building.
Yes.
And that interception turned things around big time.
I will say this, if Jalen played that entire game, especially the way he started out, I don't think it's even a close game, to be honest with you.
No, I think it was a non-competitive game. I think the Eagles win by a multiple touchdown cruise because we might have seen Pickett in the fourth quarter for other reasons had Jalen stayed in there.
Can we now come to the conclusion of how valuable Jalen is to this offense? I get tired of hearing all the indifferent comments about Jalen, both locally and nationally. But, Saquon is the star of the offense. Jalen is the engine that makes that offense go.
Yeah, I mean, nobody denies how great Saquon is, but you talk about the most essential ingredient, without a doubt, it's Jalen Hurts. Because here's the thing that he does, Gunnar, and what you saw with Pickett. They're not afraid that Pickett's going to run.
No,
so the Eagles become, I don't want to say one-dimensional because you still have Saquon, but it becomes more traditional. And you saw how the Eagles couldn't defend Jaden Daniels today and what he was able to do to them. And it was the same thing. The Eagles became a lot more predictable once Jalen was out of there. And yeah, I'm with you. Like, I just think people went so far overboard with the Jalen stuff and he can't throw. And I mean, meanwhile, the guy he showed you he could throw in 2022. If you had any doubts, I think they needed to do some correcting, get on the same page. And they did all those kind of things. And you saw it last week, but it was a massive blow. It really was. Look, I will say this too, Gunnar. During the week, I was sort of the one preaching, like, let's be careful here with this one because everybody was on the, hey, they're going to win 13 in a row and, run it off tip. And I'm saying, this is a dangerous team. A, because I think they're pretty good. B, it's a revenge game. C, you're playing there. And as you know, because you covered a million of these, even when the Eagles are good and Washington stinks, it's always a game down there, it feels like. So I thought it was a little bit of a dangerous spot for the Eagles. I didn't see all this stuff happening, but I thought the game was going to be dangerous.
I think sometimes, and I'm probably guilty of this also, when teams are on a run like the Eagles were, like Detroit was, people don't forget or don't understand how difficult it is to win 10, 11, 12, 13 games in a row in the National Football League because, even bad teams have good players. And on any given Sunday, the bad teams, and I'm not saying Washington is a bad team, but this was their best quality win of the season. If you look at all their wins, but even a mediocre team can all of a sudden reach out and grab you by the throat.
Well, I think the other part is too, I know we want them to be robots. They're making a lot of money and all that. It's hard to play at that peak level every single week. And really think about how dominant the Eagles defense has been incredible all season, right? They look human today. And some of it was injury, some of it was GJ getting kicked out of the game and all that. But for the first time in a long time, you saw receivers wide open, breakdowns, poor tackling, like stuff we haven't seen all year. And I can only attribute that to it's hard to do it every single week. And by the way, also tip of the hat, man. Daniels is nasty. That guy's a rookie who operates like a 10-year veteran.
But his arm strength, he's not the biggest quarterback in the world. Matter of fact, he's borderline rail thin. But he has a laser arm. And, man, when he steps in the pocket and takes off, you don't catch him from behind. You're not going to catch him.
He's a problem for years. And here's where this has really kind of shifted. I think, Dak's kind of on his way out or whatever that is in Dallas. New York's a disaster. These two guys are going to be going head-to-head, Jalen and Jaden Daniels, for a long time in that division because I think Washington has the right coach and I think they have the right quarterback for sure. So they're not going away anytime soon. Look, they could play again in the playoffs, these two teams.
So Kenny Pickett comes in. He goes 3 for 3 right away, 20 yards and a touchdown. I put out a tweet. It doesn't make a difference if it's Jalen or Kenny. This offense just rolls. And then all of a sudden, about an hour later, I checked my tweets, and all of a sudden, that didn't age well, did it? One guy said, D Gunn, retire. I'm like, man, people are brutal, man. But, you talk about deception. I thought Kenny was going to just roll with this offense, and all of a sudden, it's like, we got a problem here.
Yeah, it got bogged down. And what you really – look, Saquon was really good, okay? But you needed like insane performance from Saquon. I thought, with Pickett, it's hard. These guys, especially these days, get no reps in practice at all, basically. When you're the 2 or the 3, you hardly even get an opportunity. I thought all things considered, he was pretty solid. And he bought time on a couple of plays. But really, it came down to there were 2 balls that AJ almost always catches that he didn't catch today. There was Saquon, not quite as easy as Devontae, but a ball he should have had, and Bobby Wagner, knocks it out there. And then look, Devontae said it himself, man. He's like, dude, I got to catch that ball. So everything that went down, and there was a lot that went down. If they score a touchdown there and it's 2 possessions, they're walking out of there with a win. But much like the Atlanta game, the ball's right in Saquon's hands and he drops it too. It happens, man, even to the best.
You know what, Rob? The thing that irked me the most was once Jalen went out of the game, Washington changed its defensive scheme. They had 7, 8 guys in the box. They were committed to not letting Saquon beat them, especially after he broke that 68-yard run. I don't understand why Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore didn't flip the script and go to more play action because A.J. Brown on that slant route is unstoppable, but they didn't go to it. They kept trying to feed Saquon.
Yeah, and I'll give my partner on the postgame show, Jason Avant, credit. The thing that he kept saying was throw on the early downs. When they're loading the box, then once they're not in predictable situations, then you run the ball with Saquon. He said they had 8 men in the box. You had AJ and Devontae singled. You could have taken advantage and should have. Even if you don't do that, get Saquon the ball in space and let him do some things. Yeah, I thought they sort of approached it, Gunner, almost like they had all year, when you got to recognize that they're going to do something different. They're going to counter you because Jalen's not in there. So, yeah, I think on the offensive side, they could have done a better job with the play calling. On the defensive side, some of the old bad habits crept in. Now, I don't think that carries over. I think it was a bad game from some guys. But yeah, it was the first time. I mean, Gunnar, that's the first time they've lost since September 29th. The Phillies were still playing. That's how long it's been.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what, Rob? You look at the stats. The Eagles had the ball for over 36 minutes. Washington had the ball 23 plus minutes. The Eagles generated 5 turnovers. And I was going to say this. When was the last time you saw a team give up the ball 5 times and somehow find a way to win it? But I go back to earlier this season, Jared Goff in Detroit threw 5 interceptions.
That's
the Lions
right.
rallied and won a game. But it doesn't happen often. I mean, especially a team like Washington is not known as a comeback team. I'm still sitting here flabbergasted that they turned the ball over 5 times and they still won the game by 3 points.
I know, it's amazing. And there are a lot of different things that you can point at statistically that just they're lying to you, you know. But what really stands out to me, there's a couple of things. Eagles were 3 for 16 on third down.
Oh, yeah.
Awful. I mean, flat out awful. The other thing is, if you look at the numbers that the Washington's offense and Jaden Daniels had in the fourth quarter, it's crazy, man. And even take a step back, he threw for 5 touchdowns today.
Yes.
And it wasn't just Terry McLaurin, although he did get one. But, you know, Olamide Zaccheaus shouldn't be killing you like that.
He couldn't catch a cold in Philadelphia.
No, he did nothing for the Eagles last year. Like, that's the kind of thing. That's where you saw breakdowns. Like, Quinyon Mitchell gave up his first receiving touchdown this year. Okay. I mean, come on. It's crazy. Yeah. It was going to happen. But the other stuff can happen. They actually did a real good job on Brian Robinson, too, I thought today, and stripped him a couple times and all that. But there were too many of those kind of plays. And the other thing is Daniels with his wheels. That one where he picked up 29, you know, on a couple of 3rd and 4th and longs. Like, that's the thing that we're accustomed to seeing Jalen Hurts do to other teams. And it got done to the Eagles today.
Mm-hmm. What stood out to you the most about their defensive play? Because the 36 points they gave up was the most points they've given up during this 10-game winning streak since back on November 3rd when they played Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. Jacksonville scored a grand total of 23. Everybody else has scored 20 or less. So what stood out to you most about the deficiencies of the defense today?
I thought the tackling was poor. I think one of the reasons why they had the kind of success they had in the air was Fangio was trying to do a lot of different things to generate a pass rush. Once, you know, I thought Nolan Smith was effective today, but Sweat went down. That hurt him. I thought this was the first game where I really noticed Brandon Graham not necessarily being there. Jordan Davis getting hurt didn't help matters either. So I think the defensive line being impacted by some injuries made Fangio do some different things. And that's where you saw the effect on the back end. And I think CJ not being there, Slay kind of being in and out of the game, there was just a lot of confusion, man. The 12 men on the field and just breakdowns that we haven't seen all year. That's why I just think look, I didn't like the way the game was officiated, but you know, if you're CJ and Jalen Carter for that matter, you have to understand that you have a bullseye on you for even if right or wrong, whether it's fair or not, you do. And they're kind of looking for, we see this in the NBA a lot, right? Certain Draymond Green doesn't get calls that maybe some other guys would or whatever. They have to understand that these guys are looking out for them. Yeah. So as much as it's wrong, whatever, you have to stay in the game for your team, man. Like that can't happen. And I feel like just reading some of the stuff that CJ said after the game, he's sort of like unapologetic for it. And it's like, man, I get it. Like you want to show some bluster a little bit, but I hope I hope whether it's Fangio or Nick or somebody else just says to him, we need you in the game, dude. Like you take it right to the limit every single time. So to answer your question, I just think it was very uncharacteristic. The tackling especially was really sloppy for me. Like you think about how many times, I know it's not easy, but they should have had Daniels down or maybe one of the receivers down and they broke it. That kind of stuff kills you. And they've been great at that for about the last 10 weeks.
Can we talk about CJ for just a moment? Because he's been flapping his lips the entire season. He finally got caught with his hand in the cookie jar this game. You've been in the league long enough to know if you get one warning, the next one means you're gone. Yep. You have to be smart enough to know, as frustrated as you are, as intense as this game is, you have to be able to pull in your own reins sometimes because look what happened. You hurt the team instead of helping the team.
Yeah. To me, like we can't treat him like he's a rookie. Like we all appreciate that he plays with an edge. He brought a little swagger to this defense that they didn't have, frankly, last year. And that's great. But you got to know where the line is, man. Like you are so much more valuable to this team. Think about it. He had a pick earlier in the game.
Yeah.
Like that's what he does. So he's got to be in the game for them or else it changes a lot. We saw what they were partly in the secondary last year without him, and it hurt them. It really did. So I think he's got to grow up a little bit. I think he's got to understand that he's a leader on this team, and you got to know where the line is. And whether that's him, I give Carter a little bit more grace. I thought the call, that was such a BS call when with a little push and whatever. And he's a little bit younger. Okay, I'll give him a little more grace than I will CJ. He's got to figure this out quick.
Well, I would say with Jalen Carter, I mean, he's got a quick trigger also, and you got. I understand you're still a young player, but you've got to know when the play is over, you can't push an offensive lineman over the back of guys down on the field, and it's going to take a little while because from what I understand, he can go off at any given moment, and he's got to learn, what to do, what not to do, when to do it, and when not to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Part of it is what makes these guys such great players is because they have edge, right? They're just competitors. But you also have to understand that now you're going to get baited into things. You're going to put it this way, Gunnar. The Cowboys and the Giants have nothing to lose. Who cares if somebody gets kicked out of the game for them? They're absolutely going to try and trigger one of these guys and get them going and get them tossed out of the game because, oh, okay, so the receiver from the Cowboys gets kicked out. All right.
Who cares?
Doesn't matter. So but I think Nick is good with this kind of stuff of getting a message across to the players. We saw it when all the stuff went down a couple of weeks back. He's usually pretty good with this. And I think the one thing that you know how it is, you learn a lot more from failure than you do from success. And losing the game today in the manner in which they lost it, because really you could sit here and blame everybody across the board other than maybe like Saquon. Right. You can blame Pickett for the interception early. You can blame Devontae for drops, AJ for drops, Saquon for a drop, the defense in general, guys getting kicked out of the games, guys getting flags. You could blame the kickoffs. I mean, McCaffrey was killing them on kickoffs. Okay.
Yeah. What was the deal with the short kickoffs?
I don't know. It wasn't that cold. The Braden Mann should be kicking those things to the 20. By the way, how about you throw Jake Elliott in there and let him boom one into the seats? Why don't you make an adjustment there? So my point is, this is a game. This was an epic team loss, but I think it's the kind of loss too the coaches can use, tomorrow and going forward the rest of the week as a teaching tool to not let it happen again. You had your toast up. Now it's time to clean it up, guys.
You see, I saw social media. Somebody put out there, I hope this is not 2023 all over again. I'm like, come on, man. No, it's just one game. This is a completely different team.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the character they showed after the Jalen and AJ stuff, and coming out and beating the Steelers showed you should have known by now. But even if you didn't, that game should have showed you this is not the same team. This was kind of a fluky loss. Look, Washington earned it and all that, but you did as much to give yourself a loss than they did to earn it. You shot yourself in the foot. But no, this isn't the kind of crumble, fall apart loss. I don't see that.
And the thing is also, Rob, one aspect of this game I enjoyed watching was the matchup between Marshawn Lattimore and A.J. Brown. Ooh. I mean, Marshawn, he got his share of pass interference calls, but he made some big plays. None bigger than when he stripped that ball from A.J. on the sideline. When you just know that's the kind of ball A.J. does not drop.
Yeah, that's two cagey vets that just going at each other, man. That's the most fun part about the whole wide receiver defensive back dynamic. You're going to see Quinyon Mitchell in those kind of battles for the next 10 years. It's going to be awesome. But that is one of the great things when you have a guy on an island, and he was on an island a lot, and that is no easy assignment, man. He was trying all the old school moves. He had him by the waist the one time.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
Grabbed
his arm, pulled it down.
Arm, yeah, he had the hook on him the one time. It was great. But yeah, I agree with you. That was really, really cool to see. And it's just, you felt like the Eagles left a lot of meat on the bone, even though they still scored 33, whatever. There were just so many more opportunities in that game.
We're talking about the drops, and if Kenny Pickett just leads Saquon on that wheel route down the sideline, that's 6 points.
Yeah.
But then again, Saquon in the past has been known for dropping passes. Now, he hasn't dropped many this year. Yep. You have to go back to Atlanta game for one that's the most glaring. When he catches that one game, he probably scores game over as well.
I agree.
But he is known for dropping passes occasionally. You got to have that ball. I mean, you had it in your hand, man. You got to have that catch. You have to have that catch.
Yeah, and there's that one. The obvious one is Devontae, but I'm telling you, there were two AJs throughout the course of the game. One was in the first half. It was like in the late second quarter. And then there was one in that one, but we talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
that normally 9 times. That's why I'm not panicking. Like those guys are going to make those plays. You give me the same situation next week with Devontae Smith, man, he's taking that thing to the house. He's catching it and taking it to the house. So I don't think that part of it. The one thing that is going to be interesting is if you play a mobile quarterback, say in the playoffs, okay, or let's say you get to the Super Bowl, let's take it that far, and you get a Josh Allen. I think teams are going to be following this blueprint that you saw from Kingsbury, and what they did or whatever against the Eagles defense today. I think you're going to see some of that because they had a really tough time with Daniels. And granted, he's done that to almost everybody this year, but nonetheless, that's the one thing I would watch. If you're looking for a future effect, it would probably be that more than anything else for me. I think the other stuff on offense, you get Jalen back in there, man. It's just a completely different situation.
You're talking about quarterbacks that can hurt this Eagles defense with their legs. And I'm thinking as you're talking, Jared Goff, not known for scrambling. Sam Darnold, not known for scrambling. Jordan Love will take off and run occasionally, but still not. Baker Mayfield scrambles and he will take off. The only one the Eagles really have to worry about is Jaden Daniels if they get in the playoffs.
I agree. And look, that's a whole different discussion, man. This NFC, it's no joke. We keep waiting. Like we keep talking about Detroit's injuries and it's going to catch up to them. I don't know. I mean, for the most part, they just keep winning. Yeah. Minnesota is the least talked about team. And I know your brother's probably crowing and doing his thing.
And they found a way to win a game again today. Unbelievable.
Right. A crazy back and forth kind of game.
Yes.
And I don't know, man. There's a bunch of candidates who are worthy. I don't know that anybody's more worthy than Kevin O'Connell for Coach of the Year with the job that he's done. I'm telling you, Derek. Wow. Obviously, Andy Reid has one loss, right? I get it. Sean McDermott's done a great job in Buffalo. You could make a case of a bunch of other places.
Not Dan Campbell?
Dan Campbell, too, should absolutely be in consideration. But I don't know, man. Did you see Darnold being transformed like this? I didn't.
Heck no.
Good.
One man's trash is another man's treasure, and everybody kept calling Sam Darnold a bust. And all of a sudden, all he needed was the right system. And look at him now. And he wasn't even supposed to start this year.
No, it was supposed to be the kid McCarthy, and he blew out his knee. So my point is, I don't know, and it's not completely out of the realm, but it's unlikely you're going to get the 1 seed and get the bye. Any of these teams, I mean, Tampa's had really good success against the Eagles.
Yeah,
Todd Bowles, is a defensive wizard. The Green Bay game was a back and forth kind of weird game in Brazil, whatever. Minnesota's really good. Detroit's really good. My point is, there are, and you might get Washington again. There's no layups here. The Eagles are really good, but you look at the path when they got there in 22. It was the Giants, right?
Yeah.
And to your credit, you knocked
Atlanta.
Right. And you knocked Purdy out, whatever. But this is not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of knockdown dragouts in these early matchups in the NFC playoffs are going to be awesome. They're going to be great games.
The league has exactly what it wants, unpredictability right now. I mean, even though you have teams that are sitting at the top of their divisions, you look at Detroit, they've been decimated with injuries on defense in particular. The offense is still pretty much intact. Yeah. So they're going to have to put up 34, 35 points a game to have a chance to win. Minnesota, you don't know about Minnesota because historically, no matter how well they do in the regular season, they always find a way to choke. True. Green Bay's in third place in the NFC North with double-digit wins. Jordan Love hasn't thrown an interception in the last 4 or 5 games. That's when Green Bay really started to come on last year and shocked the world by going into Dallas and putting up 48 points on Dallas. Tampa Bay is that sleeper team, man.
They have some quality wins, Derek.
I'm telling you, man.
They're here's what I would say about Tampa. I think if the Eagles got him again, they would take care of business, right? Especially if they were home. But here's what I'll say to Tampa's credit, okay? You look at some of their quality wins. Tampa's beaten Washington, Detroit, the Eagles, right? I mean, some real teams, the Chargers, who are a playoff team.
Yep.
So, just don't sleep on them completely is all I would say to people. But you're right as far as everybody else goes. There's a couple things I want to see. I want to see what Sam Darnold looks like in a playoff setting.
Yes.
You want to see what that looks like, okay? I don't think Tampa a lot of this depend on if Mike Evans' health and that kind of stuff. But I don't know if they quite have the weapons to be able to hang with, some of these teams, even though they're scoring a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit could get David Montgomery back for the playoffs or deeper in the playoffs, which could help them a lot. But they are still missing a lot of pieces on defense. Man.
Yes.
So the Eagles, health-wise, are in pretty solid shape if the stuff that went down on Sunday is not too severe.
Debilitating, yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. I think that I really would like their coordinators in a preview sort of setup thing where they have time to just dig in on one of these teams. I feel good about that. And look, the things the Eagles do really well, they run the ball, they play defense. They generally have stopped turning the ball over for the most part. Mm-hmm. Those things travel, and they're a difficult team to game plan for if Jalen's right. So for all those reasons, I think they have a pretty good shot here, but you're now likely going to have to go to Detroit, which is a completely different, ball of wax here than coming to Philadelphia.
I think the Eagles are also one of the few teams in the league. I would put Kansas City in that category, maybe even Buffalo, maybe even Detroit. I think if the Eagles played an opponent in a parking lot full of glass, an alley, anywhere, I still will put my money on them because of how efficient they are in all three phases of the game. Now, special teams was off today. Mm-hmm. Defense had a letdown today. But when they're on point, I don't care if the Eagles are playing home or away. One of the few teams, if they play home or away, I feel pretty good about their success ratio.
Well, the other thing that they can do well is with the running attack is keep your offense off the field.
Yep.
Like you said today, even today in this loss, they own time of possession. They can limit your possessions. They can limit the time that you're on the field. And eventually, generally, that offensive line is going to wear down the other team's defensive line. And that's been their formula, excluding the Washington game. That's how they've won a lot of these games. It's just eventually the other team's just worn out and done. All that stuff does travel, and I wonder if Detroit's defensive line without Hutchinson and some McNeil and some of the other dudes that they're missing, like how they hold up against a team like that if they really concentrate on pounding it down their throat.
I look at the Eagles offense in this particular game. They racked up, even when Jalen went down early, they still racked up 263 yards of offense in the first half. Second half, they had a grand total of 75 yards. 75 yards. They continuously shot themselves in the foot. And I attribute it to the fact when you get 5 turnovers, you've got to generate points off those turnovers, especially on the road. They generated only like 13 points off those 5 turnovers. That was a telling tale in that game.
I agree. I really thought when Blankenship got that pick, Slay batted it up and Blankenship got the pick. I thought that was going to cement it. I thought the Eagles were going to go in and score a touchdown. It was going to be 2 possessions. I thought it was over there. The fact that you left that door open was an eerie feeling to me.
Yeah.
And you're right. And it wasn't just that one. Like if you take it away 5 times, the odds are you should win the game by at least 3 touchdowns.
Absolutely.
At least. And they didn't capitalize, and they weren't good on third down. They weren't good enough in the red zone. There were just too many of those opportunities. They left. I don't know. Maybe there's a little silver lining too. You can glimmer from it. Maybe this helps confidence-wise Jake Elliott. You lose the game, but maybe it carries over for him that he feels good about himself. It was the first time he hit one above 50 all year. Maybe that carries over that he got those 2. I know he missed the one at the end of the half, but the other 2 in the second half were not only long kicks, they were clutch kicks too, in not great condition. So maybe that's something. I don't know, but you're right. You absolutely need to score more points off of those turnovers.
You mentioned Slay a moment ago. I thought this was one of his finest games of the season. Mm-hmm. He competed, broke up passes, made the tackles. You talk about somebody that was on point all game long. Darius Slay, and let's face it, we've all chastised him all season long because teams go at him and not the rookie Quinyon Mitchell. He missed tackles, so on and so forth. I thought he played a complete game today.
I thought he had a stretch in the second quarter.
Yeah,
he was doing everything, breaking up passes. He had like 2 tackles for losses. He read the one run play beautifully. Like he was on a tear. The problem is, and it's not his fault, but when you know how it is when you get to that age, he's at that age where there are moments where he has to tap out of games because he gets hurt or something else happens. And it was all compounded today because he had to come out for a little bit. You already had GJ out, and everything sort of snowballed on them. But I agree with you. He was awesome today. And there's a lot of things that are going to get lost in the shuffle today. Like Saquon, again, he monster game. And still more than on pace to beat Eric Dickerson's record against two
Yeah.
bad teams against the run coming up in Dallas and New York. But yeah, none of that really. Who gives a damn? You lost the game.
Let me ask you this: Saquon had 29 carries in this game, $150.
Mm-hmm.
Are you concerned at this point about him being overused? I mean, when you got a workhorse like that, you got to let him go, just like a Derrick Henry, so on and so forth. When you got a workhorse like that, you got to ride that hot hand and ride that horse.
Yeah.
2 games left. Are you worried about them possibly overusing him?
I'm not. Look, anybody can get hurt, but he appears to me, in watching him this year, I watch him as the game goes on. He seems to be stronger late. And I think maybe that same thing approach there. If you looked at the injury report, I know you did, but for folks who maybe didn't get access to it, they're doing some smart things with him and some of the vets. Like they're not practicing on Wednesday. They're getting rest days. They're there, but they're not doing anything physical.
Right.
I'm probably giving him like Wednesday, Thursday, the rest of the year. You know, he can walk through it on Friday and do whatever they do on Saturday or whatever. But I think that's the way that you can kind of justify this a little bit. The thing is, though, I can't kill the Eagles for this, Derek, because you got to win games, man. Like you have to win. You haven't even clinched the division yet. I can't lighten the load next week against Dallas. I got to do whatever it takes to win the game by any means.
All right, the $1 million question, and we've discussed this time and time again. We discussed it on our post-game show as well with Seth Joyner and Mark Farzetta.
My guys.
I posed this to them as well.
Yeah.
Saquon's 100 yards away from breaking the record going into that game against the Giants.
Yep.
Meaningless game. Their seeding is already locked up.
Yeah.
Do you play Saquon in that game? Because let's face it, the other team, the Giants, they remember he busted them up for $176 the last time they played. You got a lot of guys playing for jobs in those Giants uniforms. You don't play the game scared, but you got to play the game smart. A lot of young guys probably playing in that Giants game, trying to put film together, whether to stay with the Giants or for another team, knowing that they're going to be released at the conclusion of the season. Injuries happen. Let's face it; it's a part of the game. Do you play Saquon that final game?
All right. 2 qualifiers.
Yes.
2.
Okay.
2 minutes. 2. I'm doing Chuck Woolery on you.
Right.
2 minutes. 2 seconds.
2 and 2.
2 and 2. All right. 1. I'm having a conversation that week with Saquon and saying, "Hey, man, how much does this mean to you?" Like, I'm taking what he says seriously. I'm not just doing the "you're a player, I'm the coach, I got to be the parent" thing. No, Saquon says to me, "Hey, Nick, this really means a lot to me. Like, I want this, man. Like, I worked my whole life for this. I want this." I'm taking that into account, number 1. Number 2, the other thing that you have to factor in with this, Derek, and this is where it's unique. You got to start every one of your starters, offensive line.
Yes.
You got to have Lane out there. You got to have Jordan Mailata out there. You got to have Becton out there. You got to have Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, all those guys, because I'm not throwing him out there, no disrespect, with Fred Johnson and the rest of the crew, because I got to keep him healthy. So roundabout, long way to answer this is I think I'm going for it. And I'm going to see if he can really get off in that first half. And if it's a slog, like if they're beating him down first couple series, then I'm probably pulling the plug on it.
Jordan Mailata said a couple of weeks ago on your very network, WIP, that if he's that close, the offensive line wants to be out there because let's face it, that's a part of their history as well.
You know this, like, look, we both go far enough back that we can remember, when O.J. Simpson, went, the player, not the other stuff.
You just called us old. You dated us, man.
but no, like what were they called? The Electric Company, his offensive line. So how do we know that? We know that we would never know what Buffalo's offensive line was called had it not been for O.J. Simpson. I'm just backing your point up here.
Sure.
Like, this is history for these guys. And yes, Saquon is the headliner, right? He's the leader. He's the lead singer. But these guys, man, they're a big part of this thing too. And they all want to be, not only that, they love this guy, Derek. Like, he is a leader. He's a good dude. He's a great teammate. He's all about winning. And they want to give this guy something special. And it's not a little thing. I know the risk. I get it. Believe me, I'm not blind to it. But yeah, I want this guy to get it.
Saquon obviously is the headliner, but nobody talks about Kenny Gainwell. Has played much better this year than any other time he's been with the Eagles. Big catches, big runs. And obviously he doesn't get as many touches, but man, when he's in there, the few times he's in there, he's been very productive for this team.
He's a really quality backup running back. He is. There's no other way to put it. I mean, he has the assets that you want in this offense too. He can catch the ball. He's a guy who you got to give Saquon a blow every once in a while. But they have some tough decisions, Derek. They got a lot of free agents. He's one of them. And I'm not putting him up there with like Zach Bond and some of the other guys who they have to take care of. But he's one of the guys you're going to have to make a decision on, because I think somebody else might value what he brings to the table and grab him out from under. Unless you feel that good about Shipley, I don't know. But I agree with you. I think he's a really quality teammate and a guy to have there just every once in a while to give Saquon a rest.
You talk about finding a diamond in the rough. Zach Bond. Oh. My goodness. People talk about he's going to be a Pro Bowler. He should be all pro for the way he's playing. The way New Orleans misused him when he was down there, and all of a sudden Vic Fangio and the Eagles organization identify we can make him fit here as a strong side backer. I don't think anybody saw what he's been putting up week in and week out for this team.
I didn't. I thought special teams and edge rusher on third downs, because that's how they used him in New Orleans.
Yep.
And he's a guy, like, to me, had this played out the other way, had he been an Eagle and never really got a chance and went to New Orleans and blossomed, we'd be going crazy over that, right? And props to Howie for getting him. But I think Howie brought him in for the role that we just talked about.
Yeah,
Nick Fangio saw, no, he can do more here. And this is why you get those kind of coaches. This is not something that I think the sire Patricia would have seen. Yeah. But Vic Fangio's got that keen eye for this kind of stuff. But yeah, Gunner, in terms of like consistency, week in and week out, there's nobody who's been more consistent than Zach Bond. No one. He brings it every single game.
What was your thoughts when Devontae dropped that pass over the middle that would have sealed the win for him? Because my initial reaction was when he dropped that pass, I got up on my chair and walked away from the TV and said, I can't believe what I just saw.
I said they're losing. I said they're losing because I just thought the defense was so scuffling and on its heels. Daniels was so hot at that point. You gave him way too much time. Would they have 2 timeouts or 1? I forget, whatever it was.
I think they had 1 left.
They had 1. You were just giving him too much time. So I honestly thought they were going to lose. Like, that was, to me, you needed to make that 2 possessions. You can't. All they wanted was a little bit of life, and you cracked that thing just enough, man, and they busted it. So I thought it was over. And it was just it's so rare from somebody like that who is as sure-handed as they get in the league in Devontae. So I know the kind of guy Devontae is. Like, I don't think it's going to affect him next week, but best believe that was a tough. What did they take, the bus or the train, whatever, home?
Yeah, the train.
The train. That was a tough train ride home for him, man. I guarantee you that.
Hey, speaking of next week, here come the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they smoked Dallas way back earlier in the season, but as you and I were talking about before we got on this podcast, Dallas is playing a little bit differently now. Cooper Rush has been much more effective under center now. That game may not be as easy as we think it's going to be.
Well, yeah, I think Cooper Rush is a good backup. And the other thing, their defense is they're not healthy because they are still missing some really big pieces. But when Parsons returned, they're a much more ferocious pass rush team. I think they had 6, last week, whatever. They're not to be just sort of, poo-pooed. This is going to be more of a challenge because this. Teams want nothing more than to play the role of spoiler, and Dallas has nothing to lose. So I think between Parsons and they typically do a pretty good job on him, but between some of the defensive players that they still have, Cooper Rush, you still have some dangerous weapons on the outside. They have the best kick returner in the game.
No question.
And we saw what McCaffrey did. So that's something they're going to have. Michael Clay's going to have to get tightened up real quick. I don't think this is an easy game. Let me put it to you that way. I think the Eagles ultimately win, but this is not one of those feet up, non-sweat kind of games.
In this game against Washington, there's so much blame to go around. You being a native Philadelphian and a part of WIP's radio broadcast, what do you think the scuttlebutt will be from the fan base all week long about how they play this game?
You know what? I got a lot of Kenny Pickett sucks, and
there you go.
That's not how I took. That's not my takeaway. Yeah. That's not mine. I think there's going to be a lot of Pickett bashing. I think it will lead to more appreciation for Jalen. I think there's going to be some questions about the play calling in the game because that's always an easy one to sort of pounce on. And you're right. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. There were opportunities there that I don't think they took advantage of. So I think that's going to be there. And I would think more than anything else, this is going to be a very interesting week in terms of the injuries because whether it's Jalen or Jordan Davis or some of these other guys, like you still need to win these games, man. Like you don't want to play around these last two games and limp into the playoffs. We saw that with the Phillies. The Phillies last month and a half of the season, they played like 500 ball, man, and it carried right in. You don't want to do that. Get right back on the horse and handle your business.
Robbie E., I love you like I love cake, brother. I love you, man. I appreciate you giving me time on this edition of Gun on One.
All right. So happy holidays to you, to Trish, to the whole Gun family. I love you, man. I wish you the best. I love hanging with you. And anytime you need me, I'm here.
And same to you and your beautiful family as well, man. Enjoy the holiday season, my brother.
All right, Connor.
All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of Gun on One, powered by the Inside the Birds Network. For my colleague, my brother, my good friend, Robbie Ellis, I'm Derrick Gunn. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll talk to you next week after the Eagles play the Dallas Cowboys.